Greetings and welcome to Enigmatic. It's been a minute. I've just been both busy and then also in my own inner process, just working on myself, my mental health, things like that. But here we are yet again. Now, I'm not sure if it's just me, other people might observe this as well, but it seems like people are getting crueler over time. And I feel like some of this can be attributed to social media and the further optics that we have on our fellow man. Um, it's interesting because I listen to commentaries about things that are going on the internet, partly because it makes me laugh, but also because I like to be aware of just what's going on. However, I refuse to use things like TikTok. Um, I only use Instagram really to post all my squats because I squat every single day. I got rid of my Facebook back in college over 15 years ago. Social media just really isn't my thing. And a lot of it is because of what I observe with regards to people's behaviors when they can be keyboard warriors. Um, and so it's interesting how everything has become divisive almost. Um, I'm the type of person that thinks you have to give respect to get it. But there are people that'll talk about things that they're offended by online, and suddenly they're just a snowflake, which is very interesting to me. And the people that call other people snowflakes tend to one want respect as well, but two, and I don't mean this to be mean, but I find that a lot of people that use the term snowflake happen to kind of be snowflakes. They just don't handle things well. They don't handle dissenting opinions very well. They don't handle contrary opinions very well. And so, one of their ways to delimit and marginalize the people that they disagree with is to call them snowflakes. Which a further issue of that is logical. It's an ad hominem. So they're not attacking what the person says or going at the statement the person says. They're going at the person themselves. And to say that they're just completely wrong and off base. And it's something that I think is interesting to observe. But while it's interesting, I find it also very, very saddening, because part of that also shows a lack of empathy. And as the population increases and people are having very, very hard times in life, depression rates are higher than they've ever been, since depression has been recognized in the DSM-5. Um, we are just becoming more callous and more cruel to each other instead of open and receptive. And I find it interesting that people allow themselves to get so bothered by things that are really inconsequential to them as a person, and they want to kind of attack things that they disagree with, even if it doesn't affect them. This can be from people's lifestyles, to what people eat and things like that. And then the other thing that I'm observing, that might also perpetuate a lot of these issues is, there's a lot of bad information out there. These armchair TikTok psychologists that are trying to educate people on what ADHD is like, or depression, or the wave of kids that think they have some mental disorder because they heard some vague description of it, on the internet, and the description was so vague that really it could have fit anybody, but they don't have the skills of self-reflection in order to realize that it could apply to everybody, and then assume that they have the condition that is being spoken about. And that's the other thing. It seems like it's cool right now to have some sort of ailment, as if you're only respected if you've been through something. If anybody thinks that they need to hold their trials and tribulations over your head in order to make you feel lesser, they're not the type of person that anybody needs to really be talking to. Trauma and dealing with trauma is not a competition. And I think that when somebody has trauma that is worse than someone else's trauma, it shouldn't be a tit for tat of, you went through this, oh well, yeah, I went through this. I'm sorry, that's just fucking childish. And that's kind of what I mean in regards to we're lacking empathy. It doesn't matter what you've been through. That doesn't invalidate somebody else's experience, even if it was lesser trauma than yours. And the issue with that also is that when we think about trauma, trauma is a two-way road. It's not just about what happened to an individual, but it's also about how that individual responds to it. So there's a lot of things that most people might find traumatic, but that doesn't mean that everybody's going to have a traumatic response. So you have the thing that is considered traumatic or that can cause trauma, and then the response that is a traumatic response. And so this is another reason why there's no comparison to actually be made. If you're having a hard time, you're just having a hard time. Now, granted, yeah, there's some people who are having a hard time just because they don't want to learn some hard lessons and can't get their shit together and don't necessarily have some sort of ailment or whatnot. But at the same time, we all learn different lessons at different times in different ways. And so I think that those people also deserve some compassion, even if they need to be checked a little bit. Um, so I hope this is an interesting diatribe because this is something that's been on my mind for a while. But going back to what I observe with people being just more and more cruel, some of it has to do with value judgments about things that, again, don't matter to a specific individual. You know, for example, if a dude likes to paint his nails, that doesn't make him gay. It also doesn't necessarily make him effeminate. It could be part of a certain cultural paradigm that he's a part of. You know, there are some dudes in the punk scene that like to paint their nails and they're quote unquote perfectly straight. Why should any other man that grew up in a different way or that has different values say, "Oh, he's not a man. He doesn't deserve my respect"? That's just asinine to me, and it's childish. Um, that person having fingernails painted means nothing to the other individual that wants to cast judgment about it. It just goes against the grain of what they're used to, and they can't see that they're operating from a cognitive bias that is impacting them in a way where they can't accept somebody else as they are. Um, I'll use myself as an example with this. I'm a heavily tattooed individual. Um, Within tattoo culture, there's a lot of different observations made about people that get tattoos. One of those observations is that certain people that get tattoos, like their first tattoo on their hand or, forearms only, and it's a big forearm piece, but they have no other tattoos, they got it for show. And then in a certain sense, it's inauthentic. And I kind of, align with that old school mentality a little bit. Get some of the space on your body filled up, some of the real estate filled up, and then start putting it in areas that it shows more. It's also kind of like kids that decide that their first tattoo is going to be a neck tattoo. Like you're doing it for optics, not really for yourself. And you're doing it for yourself through optics. Um, and there's a little bit of inauthenticity, and to me, there's a little bit of thoughtlessness there. However, yes, I think this. It doesn't mean anything to me. I'm not going to treat anybody that I see with these kinds of tattoos any differently than anybody else. If it comes up in conversation what my thoughts are about it, maybe I'll share that with them. But they're still a person that deserves compassion and respect and empathy just like anybody else that wants it. They also deserve to be listened to. And that's something else that is very, very funny to me is that I listen to people, on these commentary channels and just in my day-to-day sometimes as well. And with social media being the way it is, it's a one-way road with these parasocial relationships. So like you don't have to deal with somebody responding immediately back to you like it is in normal discourse and from person to person. And so that being said, you can notice that a great deal of people they want to be heard, but they don't want to listen. And like respect, that's also a two-way road. I'm the type of person where if somebody keeps interrupting me in a conversation, I just stop talking. And at some point, they might ask, like, "Hey, Derek, why aren't you speaking anymore? Or why don't you have anything else to say?" And I'll just straight up say, "Because you keep interrupting me. I can't complete a thought." And it's a waste of time and conversation to me. It's not fruitful in any way. It doesn't go anywhere when people are just talking over each other. I have a friend in Italy who says that it's actually kind of common in certain places in Italy, and I'm like, that would drive me so much up the wall, and I just wouldn't speak. But I want to be heard, but if I want to be heard, I'm also willing to listen. So the other thing that I want to tack onto this, because I feel like society's kind of falling apart due to these things, and again, I would like to put a lot of the brunt of this on social media, but social media also gives us these echo chambers where we are kind of forced to continue thinking the same things over and over again because we're only getting things that appeal to other things that we've seen in the past. And there's a cognitive bias that talks about the more often you hear something or you see something, the more likely you are to believe that it's true. And that includes things that initially you knew that they were false from the get go. The more you hear it, the more likely you are to believe it's true. The more people that are around you that propound certain ideas, the more likely you are to, you know, align with those ideas as well. And so I just find that, you know, it's almost like critical thinking is dying because we don't have to have very long attention spans anymore because social media just gives us what our dopamine is asking for, and we're just kind of going off of dopamine circuits and dopamine impulses. And we're collectively getting dumber. And it's just something that I feel like I can only observe. Because people are real sure about themselves on things that they're completely wrong about, and you can just watch it and you can see it. And you know, with my background in philosophy, I feel very comfortable saying, you know, what is critical thinking and what isn't. And so that's another thing that's funny is that there's people that will say like, you know, a lot of people don't critically think, but here's this idea that I came up with, and you know, this came from like critical thought. One part of critical thought in my book is how can you be wrong? I think I mentioned this in a different video, but that's something that I've asked myself on a regular basis since I was in high school. Even if I knew I was right, how could I be wrong? What assumptions am I operating off of in order to come to the conclusions that I'm drawing? Not only that, but you know, even with questions, when we ask a question, there are certain implied assumptions that go along with that question. So, for example, what is the meaning of life? Well, the assumption there is that there is a meaning. We don't know that there is one, but we're meaning making creatures, and so we can't help but want one. And so then, without really second guessing it, we just assume that there must be some meaning that we need to discover. And then also, it's kind of funny when we put it in just a term of meaning, as if there's one meaning that is supposed to be ubiquitous for all 8 billion people on the planet. It's just a little sideways to me. You know, we also have to scrutinize the questions that we want to ask. Now, for me, it might be a little bit easier because epistemically, I am a skeptic, and I'm working slowly on it, but trying to write a treatise on this. And this is actually a section, is we ask these questions, and we just assume that our questions are valid. Instead of also saying, hey, for us to have a question in the first place, we also have to have some presupposed assumptions and maxims that are substantiating and upholding the question that is in question. Um, so yeah, just some thoughts. I was a little bit all over the place, but yeah, if you liked, please feel free to hit that little like button. The more subscribers, the better. Let's make it a party, y'all. And yeah, be good to you, be good to others, and I'll see you next time. Take care.